So how do you actually tear apart an app like this? The process starts with getting the files off the device. Using ADB, the Android debug bridge, you can pull the app.exe files directly from a phone that has the app installed. It only takes a few minutes from there. The app.exe gets loaded into JAD.exe, which is a tool that decompiles Android applications back into readable Java code. The first thing that becomes apparent is the architecture. This is a React Native app built with Expo, specifically SDK 54. It runs on the Hermes JavaScript engine, which is Facebook's optimized JavaScript runtime for mobile apps. The real logic of the application lies in a 5.5 megabyte Hermes bytecode bundle. The native Java side is essentially just a thin wrapper around this bundle. It is not doing much heavy lifting itself. Digging into the configuration reveals more details. The Expo configuration points to an entity called 45press as the builder. The backend, powering the whole thing, is WordPress with a custom REST API. The researcher found this by extracting strings from the Hermes bytecode bundle and filtering for URLs and API endpoints. Everything comes from Whitehouse Gov using a custom Whitehouse v1 namespace. The endpoints themselves tell a story about what the app is designed to deliver. There are endpoints for news articles, live streams, photo galleries, policy issues, and various other content categories. It is essentially a content portal built on top of a WordPress installation, which is a fairly common pattern for mobile apps that need to serve dynamic content without building a custom backend from scratch. Once I had the bytecode extracted, the content infrastructure became clear. The app pulls everything from a WordPress REST API using a custom namespace called Whitehouse v1. This is not unusual. WordPress powers a lot of government sites. What is unusual is seeing it wrapped in a mobile app this way. The endpoints themselves tell a story about what the administration wants to prioritize. There is a home endpoint for the main screen, naturally. Then you have news articles and something called The Wire, which appears to be a dedicated news feed. Live streams get their own endpoint. Photo galleries have one. Policy content is split across issues, priorities, and achievements. There is even an affordability endpoint which serves drug pricing information. A media bias section exists as well, and there is a proxy for pulling in content from X, formerly Twitter. But the hard-coded strings embedded in the bundle are where things get more interesting. You find phrases like the Trump effect and greatest president ever right there in the code. There is a prompt to text President Trump at 45470 links to Trump's Gov and Trump accounts, Gov. All of this is baked directly into the app itself, not fetched dynamically from any server. And then there is something that gave me pause: a direct link to the ICE tip reporting form. This is the form used to report suspected immigration violations to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It is embedded in what is presented as a news application, not hidden in some obscure corner of the code, but sitting there in the string table, alongside the news endpoints and promotional content. A government news app that includes a direct channel to report people to immigration authorities that is worth thinking about. Now, this is where things get really interesting. The app has a web view for opening external links, which is pretty standard. Most apps that link out to websites need something like this. But every time a page loads in that web view, the app injects a JavaScript snippet. I found it buried in the Hermes bytecode string table. Let me walk you through what this code actually does. It hides cookie banners. It strips out GDPR consent dialogues. It removes OneTrust pop-ups, privacy banners, login walls, sign-up walls, upsell, prompts, paywall elements, and those CMP boxes that everyone hates clicking through. Pretty comprehensive. But there is more to it than just hiding elements. The code also forces the body overflow style to auto, which re-enables scrolling on pages where consent dialogues have locked the scroll. You know those annoying pop-ups that freeze the page until you accept cookies? This bypasses that entirely. And then it sets up a mutation observer to continuously remove any consent elements that get added dynamically after the page loads. So even if a website tries to sneak a banner in later, this code nukes it. Think about what this means for a moment. An official United States government app is injecting CSS and JavaScript into third-party websites to strip away their privacy protections. These are not the White House's own websites. These are external sites that have chosen to implement consent dialogues, some of them legally required by regulations like GDPR, and the app is actively bypassing those protections. The native code confirms this is using the injected JavaScript prop on a React Native web view. Every page load in the in-app browser triggers this injection. It wraps the whole thing in an immediately invoked function expression and runs it through Android's evaluate JavaScript method. This is deliberate intentional behavior baked into the app itself. Remember that with nLocation plugin from the Expo config. The one that's supposed to strip out location tracking. Here's where things get strange. Despite that plugin being declared, the OneSignal SDK's complete GPS pipeline is compiled directly into the app. The code is there, fully present, ready to run. Let me walk you through the timing constants I found buried in the bytecode for foreground location updates. The interval is set at 270,000 milliseconds. That's 4.5 minutes for background updates. We are looking at 570,000 to 600,000 milliseconds, which works out to roughly 9.5 to 10 minutes. These are not random values, they are deliberate polling intervals for location data. Now here's the important context. This tracking does not just silently activate on its own. There are 3 separate gates that all have to be unlocked before anything happens. Think of it like a series of locks on a door. The first gate is the _is_shared flag, which gets read from shared preferences and defaults to false. The second gate lives in the JavaScript layer, a function called setLocationShared. The third gate is inside the location manager itself, running its own checks before the fused location API ever gets called. All 3 of these need to align before tracking begins. The code is there, the timing constants are defined, but the gates start in a closed position. What this means in practice is that the infrastructure for location tracking exists in the app, compiled and ready, but it requires explicit activation. The question becomes who controls those gates and under what conditions they might open. A post went viral claiming the app had what it called China-level Big Brother permissions. It racked up over 800,000 views. The claim listed a disturbing set of capabilities: precise and approximate location tracking, access to the fingerprint scanner, the ability to modify shared storage, control over network and Wi-Fi connections, permission to run at startup, and the power to prevent your phone from sleeping. It sounded like a surveillance toolkit. But here's where things get complicated. When you actually check the Play Store listing and look at the permissions section under About, you see something different entirely. The store shows run at startup, Google Play license, check view, network connections, prevent phone from sleeping, show notifications, control vibration and full network access, no location, no biometrics, no storage modification. Just a fairly standard set of permissions for a news and content app. This disconnect sparked a real debate among developers who started looking closer. Some argued that location permissions can be requested at runtime through JavaScript calls, even without being declared in the manifest upfront. Others pointed out that Android simply does not work that way. You cannot request location at runtime without declaring it in the manifest. First, the Play Store's permissions section would reflect that declaration. The technical reality is that if location is not in the manifest, the app literally cannot ask for it, so we are left with a strange situation: a viral claim that spread widely, a permissions list that does not match what independent verification found, and a technical argument about whether the claim is even possible on Android. The gap between what people were told to fear and what the app actually requests according to Google's own store listing is worth paying attention to. The Hacker News discussion thread revealed something unexpected. Readers started questioning whether the original article was even written by a human. The writing had a certain quality that people have come to associate with AI-generated content. Someone pointed out the phrase "load bearing" appearing multiple times, which has become something of a tell for certain AI writing styles. Then there was the table organizing 68 libraries by subjective categories. Who actually sits down and creates something like that by hand? But the skepticism went deeper than just writing style. Several commenters actually downloaded the app to verify the claims themselves. What they found in the Play Store permissions list was notably different from what the article suggested. The store showed basic permissions like run at startup, network access, notifications, and vibration control. Location was nowhere to be found. This sparked a technical debate that never really got resolved. One side argued that without location declared in the manifest, the app simply cannot request it. The other side pointed out that JavaScript running in a web view can still call location functions, though this would trigger a user consent prompt. Someone mentioned that network information calls return degraded data without proper location permissions. Anyway, the core question hung in the air: does the OneSignal location tracking code actually activate without explicit user approval? The article implied it could. The technical pushback suggested otherwise. Nobody in the thread ran a live network capture to settle it definitively. The manifest shows what permissions are declared. The bytecode shows what code exists, but the gap between code existing and code executing remains the unverified territory.